Go.
Big exciting news out of Marvel Studios.
No. I don't believe you.
This is was not originally announced for their, because I've been saying for a while that I want Marvel to step up their animation and do what DC is doing. Well, I think we're headed the right direction, because not this Friday, but the next Friday, the 22nd, we'll get What If, and that's going to come out each day. There's 9 episodes of that. We got Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. It was originally going to be Spider-Man freshman year. There's also the X-Men 97 shows that are going to be produced per Disney+. But this one, it was previously unannounced, kind of done under a lot of wraps. Black Panther, Eyes of Wakanda. So we're going to get a new...
This looks interesting.
Animated, and it looks like it's going to be in the style of the What If stuff.
Okay.
But again, that could just be shot. Actually, you know what? I don't even think that is shots of the show. I don't think they released anything. I think the shot that I was looking at was Black Panther in the What If episode.
Huh.
So we don't know what this style is going to be. So that's interesting. And it is exciting that Marvel is getting serious about animation. Can I give you a brief description of what it is? This is what they released to the press. So Black Panther, Eyes of Wakanda is the story of brave warriors who have been tasked to travel the world retrieving dangerous vibranium artifacts. This is their story. So I kind of love the idea of like Black Panther, Black Ops.
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, who are they going to have in it? I mean...
they haven't announced... This is it. They haven't announced...
like the characters.
Yeah. They haven't,
I know you... Yeah.
They haven't said anything, so I guess this is all speculation. But would it be...
I would assume it would not be M'Baku. I'm assuming he wouldn't be in it because he's not... I mean, he doesn't like...
Yeah, see, that's
Wakanda,
the thing.
Or he's been kind of against the king. And...
We don't know how this is going to tie into what Coogler's done. So,
right.
So that's what's going to...
Or, okay, so freshman year, is that supposed to be tied in the MCU? Or rather, your Friendly Neighborhood...
Yeah, I originally thought it was, but I don't know. I think they might be doing
I would
their own
like
thing.
them to keep the cartoons separate.
I would too.
I mean, it's weird when you see a live-action interpretation of a cartoon.
It works fine for What If because you are playing with the MCU.
Yes, and it's a lot cheaper to do What Ifs on cartoon.
Look, man.
Shit.
Look, I
we have to reshoot this whole sequence.
I got to be honest. We've talked about this before. What makes them fun has to be what makes them fun in that particular medium.
Yeah.
Those Spider-Man games that I talk so much about, they work well for Spider-Man and its own continuity in this game. They're allowed to make their own universe, make their own Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always loved about video games and how they were different from, like, yeah, you had your tie-in games for a while, but you know, those Batman Arkham games are their own continuity. They're not tied to anything. They're their own universe. And I see what you're saying, where I kind of would like the idea of this to be, and the animated stuff to be just separate. And DC's also really good with doing that. But if you want to use the MCU to your advantage, that's cool. But it does run into the stuff we were talking about with Star Wars.
I wish that I wish they would have. I wish they would have utilized some of the cartoon stuff, the Clone Wars stuff, when they were talking about 30 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, that way it wouldn't be such, like, how the fuck are they going to explain where are all these characters
in 30 years?
Right, that they're not around to help against the First Order.
They're not involved at all in those movies.
Now, we've talked about how prequels kind of suck too, but I will say this.
I'm also a hypocrite.
Well, we were talking about Mad Max last week.
Well,
or whatever.
I love Furiosa.
Right, but here's the other thing too. Revenge of the Sith is pretty fucking rad. Okay, I know that at the end of the movie he's going to be Darth Vader. I know that, right? But one thing I didn't know is that at one point he was just a dark or a Sith, a guy named Darth Vader. Like, he wasn't, you know what I mean? You always think of Darth Vader in the suit. But at one point he was just Anakin with yellow eyes, and he had renamed himself Darth Vader. That was cool.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but
so you can like prequels, and you can want them to be good, and you can be, whatever. But that's another example of like the clone of how the Ahsoka show had a lot of cartoon characters in live action, right? And that it works. I don't know that I want to have a cartoon that ties into the MCU, and then we see, can you get the person who does the voice acting, like, or do they look like that person in case you need to have them in the MCU, like in live action, shit like that. It's just a lot of work, I think. Do you think?
Yeah, well, the problem you run into is if you're going to do it with Black Panther, you'd have to think that narratively, this would have been what's T'Challa's dad's name?
T'Chaka.
T'Chaka. I feel like this would be something T'Chaka would do.
Right.
And so I feel like by
and there's
nature,
no indication
it's
that
like
it's present day.
It's a prequel. I feel like this is going to be
cool
a
with me.
prequel and how they tie it to the Black. Again, it runs into those things where, like, if the story, like, again, I keep saying again, I don't feel like my feelings towards prequels have changed because I have had complaints about the MCU where it's like they do things to be like, oh, well, did you know that Jake Gyllenhaal was in the audience and then in this thing from the 90s where it's not even Robert Downey Jr., he's in Civil War. You just didn't see him even though he was not in Civil War. Or they do. And it's like, just be in the present sometimes.
They've done retconning.
Yeah, but it does sound interesting, and I think it's just because we have not got a ton of like mainstream Black Panther comics or cartoons, and we've had those movies, but like we haven't had the video. Like, there's a couple video games coming out about Black Panther, and like you're seeing a resurgence.
You're surprised. You're a little bit surprised that there isn't more content around this character when it's so in demand.
And this is the thing. I think a lot of this is because of Chadwick. Because of him passing away, I think that because dude, it was so obvious in Infinity War and Endgame that they were gonna put it more on him and have him be the leader, have Sam still be involved as Captain America, like still have that New Avengers thing, but he was clearly him and Carol were gonna lead it.
Yep.
Like that was gonna be their plan. And so that's why I think we're starting to see these things that were already in the pipeline start to come out and still keep the character relevant.
Kind of retooled.
Yeah. So I have two thoughts about it. I'd love it to be its own continuity, its own thing. But if you're going to do it, I think the T'Chaka angle is a good idea. Or, I mean, you could do it with any Black Panther because that had been their lineage. Their lineage had always been that we're walling off the world. So you could tell it at any point of the Black Panther timeline. So, because in your own universe, you've set up that vibranium has been there for centuries.
Right.
So,
well, you start thinking about exactly. You start thinking about okay, I play that Marvel Strike Force game, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But they have their Wakandan team, which is Shuri, Black Panther, T'Challa, Killmonger, Okoye, and then M'Baku. That's the Wakandan team. But then they have a couple of other characters that have come out, Nakia. And the Black Panther from Avengers 1 million BC or one, with the skin or the panther skin, which I think is an awesome design for the character, like especially like the first one, whatever. But those are called war dogs. Now, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because that's two new characters that they introduced, not a full like 5-person team, but how many other characters in the Black Panther mythos, which I am not as familiar with as others.
Yeah.
Can you play with? How big is the sandbox already? And I think it's okay because it's maybe not his whole not pantheon, but like everybody that he knows plus his villains, not his rogues gallery, but all of it. Is not as well known to the general public, I think, as, say, Spider-Man's.
Yeah.
So I think you can kind of toy with that a little bit and create characters if you need to kind of flesh that out. Certainly you could have... See, the thing that sucks about the continuity of the MCU is that in the comic books, Natasha Romanoff is like 100 years old, okay? She's been around forever. So is Captain America, so is Wolverine, right? So you had like an issue of the X-Men where it's 1932 Madripoor, okay? And it's Black Widow and Captain America and Logan like doing shit. It's fucking kick ass.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that in the MCU because you can't say that, Captain America came back for a little bit at this time when this person, because Natasha Romanoff isn't 100 years old in the MCU or whatever. So
Yeah.
I mean, you can create different characters. You can how much, if it's a prequel, how much like other characters in the MCU can you bring in? Is that a way to introduce the Fantastic Four and then say that they got sucked into the thing? And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you can't have another origin story, but you also got to explain why nobody knows about them. Why nobody out of the universe. We all know the reason why Reed Richards and shit has never been mentioned is because they didn't own the rights to the character. We know that, right? But you got to explain to me when you bring the Fantastic Four into the MCU. I'm not sure we started talking about Black Panther.
I know. We need to get back to the.
Where's the fucking sounder?
Okay.
If you're gonna bring the Fantastic Four into the MCU, you got to explain where they've been and why nobody's ever mentioned them before, and why Nick Fury was like, "You're the first superhero." Burr, burr, burr. Okay, let's go.
Jeez.
Off panel, off topic with Jake and Tyler.